Hello everybody, this is Jackson Rasco
Connor Nielsen.
and this is a new show that we're going to be doing on Geekvolution called Socratic Circle Cinema. And the idea behind this show is pretty much we're going to be talking about film but not reviewing it. So this isn't about saying whether or not we like a movie or not. This is us talking about topics that are related to film, the film industry, indie films, and just all that kind of stuff. So what are we talking about today, Connor?
Well, Rasco, we are going to be talking today about Indiana Jones 5, the recently confirmed Indiana Jones 5 that is going to bring back Harrison Ford to the role of Indiana Jones. And this has caused a lot of controversy amongst people. A lot of people really wanted to do recast, cast him younger, do a 007-esque kind of a thing, take him back to World War II, punching Nazis in the face, and just going on those kind of archaeology adventures because they don't think it really works in the context of Harrison Ford being older.
So, I'm going to go ahead and say that I was in the camp of people when this announcement that that Indiana Jones 5. So, wait a second. Was the announcement that we were getting Indiana Jones 5 at the same time when they announced that Harrison Ford would play Indiana Jones?
Correct.
Okay, so I like the idea of doing another Indiana Jones movie, but I was in the camp that I kind of thought it would be interesting if we just recasted Indiana Jones. And the reason was that I felt that Indiana Jones should be treated kind of like a character similar to James Bond, where it's the outfit, the persona, the theatricality of those movies that's so iconic, and you don't necessarily need Harrison Ford in the role, is what I have always thought. And I always thought that there are so many actors nowadays that would be perfect for that role. And, obviously we have a lot of people, like Chris Pratt's a name that people always throw around, and I've always liked that one. I've never understood when people say that he would be a great Han Solo. That doesn't make any sense to me. But a good Indiana Jones, I can totally see that. And I think there are tons of other actors that could also be a great younger Indiana Jones. So for me, it felt like if there was ever a time to just go ahead and bite the bullet and do it, it would be right now.
And I was in the camp that I did not want to recast. I fully understand why people would like that, because it's clear that one of the inspirations for Indiana Jones was James Bond. We even had Sean Connery in the third film, if that wasn't clear enough.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I didn't think we should have recast, and the one reason that was because of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I think now that we have moved on, we have made a movie where there is an older Indiana Jones. It's awkward and frustrating to have just all of a sudden after the fact recast. And it bugs me that more and more we're going to the route of let's just pretend the stuff we don't like didn't happen and continue moving on. That is the basis of why I'm okay with them keeping Indiana Jones around, because basically what they have the chance to do now is correct the wrongs of Indiana Jones 4, which I don't think is a very good movie, but I like it more than a lot of other people do.
So I would agree with you that I like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull more than most people. And I also think that that's a really good point. And that's a thing where it's like, it makes me like Indiana Jones 4 less, because it's like, oh man, you've made it awkward now for us to recast Indiana Jones. And you're totally right that, like, we've established that old Indiana Jones is still Harrison Ford now. So it is really weird in that way. And I think that there is still hope down the road to recast Indiana Jones, and that's why I find it really annoying that I don't know who it was that said this, but they were like, Indiana Jones is only Harrison Ford, and when he's gone, that's the end of that role. I always found that weird, because I know in 20 years we're going to go, young Indiana Jones movie, and we're going to cast him young, and in 20 years, that's what's going to happen, I think. Like, regardless. And I agree with you that it's awkward, and it's a fault of Indiana Jones 4 in a way, because it's like, oh man, it would be inconsistent for us to recast with a younger Indiana Jones or something more akin to the original trilogy Indiana Jones. It is awkward now, and it's really sad. It makes me sad. It makes me want to put the blame on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull even more. But the thing is, Indiana Jones has always kind of been like that escapist entertainment where he's that guy that everyone wants to be. He's like a Tyler Durden. He's like that really cool guy, and he's suave and he knows how to handle himself. He can fight. He's attractive. He gets the girls, and that's Indiana Jones. And you lose that with an older Indiana Jones because nobody wants to be a 70-year-old going around on adventures.
Yeah, but here's where I like the idea of continuing a franchise. Basically, what you kind of described was Indiana Jones is a power fantasy.
Yeah.
Uh, that's glitzed up and given to us in a very Spielbergian, well-produced, affectionate way to a time where film serials were just power fantasies. That's all they really were. Um, but what we can do now is we can mature that power fantasy. We can make that thing into something more mature. And I really like that in putting Harrison Ford as more of an actor in this role because I love Indiana Jones. He's a great character, but it's not like a thespian's role. And I'm not saying that I want, Harrison Ford to be nominated for an Academy Award for playing Indiana Jones or anything. But I would really like to see where this character goes when they do grow up. We never get to see that kind of a thing,
Yeah.
and I don't think we even really got to see that in Indiana Jones 4. What I would love to see, and the reason I like this as a risk, is because we can potentially make everyone, after the fact, like Indiana Jones 4 a little bit more.
Hmm.
Because think about it's unclear whether Shia LaBeouf is going to return or not.
Yeah.
But they've made it pretty clear that this is going to be a continuation after Indiana Jones 4. This is continuing after Crystal Skull. I can't. I think that came out like a week or so ago. So I think it's interesting that we got George Lucas out of there. That's one big piece of information that was clear. George Lucas is not involved in this movie. So what we can do now is we can um, make a good movie with the pieces that we were given after Indiana Jones 4 and make something better than that came before it. And maybe in retrospect, we can make all that stuff that people are sour on like feel better about. So when we go back and rewatch Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we can be happier watching it knowing where it goes.
Yeah. I do like the point about we can. I would like to almost make Indiana Jones the cool old guy that we all want to be when we're old. I think
Yeah.
that is where you could take the character. And that would be really interesting. And I also like that you pointed out that like we never get to see the action hero after his day in the sun. And that's why I like Rocky Balboa, the sixth Rocky movie, because it's the story of like the guy after the happy ending, and he has to find that second happy ending in a way. So I do. There are a lot of cool things you can do with an older Indiana Jones, and there are a lot of interesting things that having Harrison Ford in the role lends itself to. Um, it's just I don't like the idea that like I don't like that people are saying that Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. Like you can't have him without it because I think that I find it very annoying that like the people that go around talking about how you can't recast that person blah 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 because I just don't think that's true. I remember I saw an interview with Quentin Tarantino where they asked him about his favorite movie of 2015, and he is talking about how at first he was like, his answer was Mad Max, and at first he was like, I don't know how you do a Mad Max movie with Mel Gibson when Mel Gibson's still alive and don't have Mel Gibson as Mad Max. And then when he saw the movie, he was completely won over by it. And it's like, I feel like that can happen with any character. I don't think any character, for me at least, is sacred or off the table from being recasted. At least not for me.
That's a great point. I didn't even consider that. Um, the thing about Indiana Jones though is I think they missed their chance to do that
Yeah, and I would agree with that, yeah.
because by the end of Last Crusade, it ends on the perfect note. So making a fourth one is just awkward to begin with. So I think making a fifth one where they're just going recasting, it's awkward a second time. So they already hedged their bets in my eyes with Crystal Skull. So just to go back on that, it's such a weird reactionary looking at the trends, seeing what's working, what's not. It doesn't feel like. See, the thing about Indiana Jones is that those movies, while being reliant on the past, they made stuff for the current movie audience.
Hmm.
And what they also did was they influenced a lot of what came afterwards. So to see Indiana Jones nowadays being so reactionary, it feels like the X-Men movies post X-Men 2, and then like pre First Class, where it's like it's very reactionary as to like, oh, what's hot right now? Prequels are popular right now. Big action movies and Brett Ratner, and they just kind of threw all these stuff in there, and it felt like it was the times informing these products.
Hmm.
And I know this is not going to have any kind of ramification on the actual film. Come 30 years from now, people are just going to watch a fifth Indiana Jones movie and not really care. But I think context as to when a movie comes out is important.
Hmm. Yeah, and I agree
And
with that.
so it's weird that they're going to look at the success of like yeah, I'm not saying that's what they did, but if they did recast, it would really strike me as what they did with the Jurassic World of let's just pretend 2 and 3 didn't happen. No one likes those movies, and let's just make a new one and pretend those two didn't happen. And that to me is very reactionary and being aware and not sticking to your guns. And
Hmm.
I don't like that.
Yeah, that's a good point because there are some franchises where like that's what they need to move forward. They just need to just not even make an excuse for it. Like X-Men Apocalypse, or not X-Men Apocalypse, X-Men Days of Future Past was like a huge just step forward in cinema where we just retconned so many movies. A movie that came out like how long did the Wolverine come out? How much time was between the Wolverine and Days of Future Past?
Like
Because
10 months.
yeah, they retconned a movie that had just come out. That's crazy, and that was a huge thing for me, and that has already influenced tons of other projects. So the Alien franchise. So obviously, a lot of people don't like Alien 3, Alien 4, and Neil Blomkamp comes out and he's like, "Look, I'm directing an Alien movie that takes place after Aliens with Ripley, with Hicks, and it's pretty much Alien 3 done again." And they kept saying, "Oh, we're not retconning Alien 3 and Alien 4," but if you've seen the concept art, if you know it, yes, it is. It is retconning those films. So we were gonna get that, and that movie's now in limbo, I guess. I'm not sure what's going on with that project, but it is a thing where it's like sometimes that's what a franchise needs is to just recast and move forward. And it's a weird thing where Indiana Jones doesn't need to do that because they still have Harrison Ford, so they don't have to recast to keep going. And I don't know. The thing is, so many people are going to have a bad taste in their mouth with this new movie because of the last Indiana Jones. And here's the thing that's going to bother me more. In Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, there's so much humor in that movie about how, oh look, Indy's old now, haha, and he tries to swing into the truck and he misses and he swings back and he's like, oh, I thought that was closer. Like that kind of comedy was funny and like it's funny to see that with Indiana Jones, but with Indiana Jones 5, are they going to keep doing that? Because like now it's even more hilarious that there's such an old guy going on these adventures, and it's like it's even funnier now. But are they going to keep going with the jokes about how Indiana Jones is old? Because that's going to get old really fast, and I don't want that at all. I would much rather just have Indiana Jones old and don't talk about it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing to say because how long was Indiana Jones 4 after the third one? Like couple decades, right?
I guess.
Uh, it was 19 years because the third one came out in '89, and Crystal Skull came out in 2008, right?
Um, I think that's right.
Okay, so that was like 19 years. This is coming out. They say it's coming out in 2019, so that's coming out 11 years later. So this is such a bizarre place to put it in anyways because we already have the old Indiana Jones movie, but this is like a sequel 11 years later. So he's even older, but it's a continuation. But everyone just kind of likes the first three movies to begin with,
Yeah.
and most people like the first and third one to begin with. So this whole thing is very weird, and I don't think we have another project in the works that has the circumstances surrounding it.
Yeah. I also will say I do want them to make more Indiana Jones movies because I'm one of those people where like if you get a trilogy of movies that is like perfect and it's just like oh my god and everyone and it's kind of universally agreed upon like for me I think that Indiana Jones the original 3 films I think that's one of the best film trilogies we have and when we make a fourth one and it's not good or it's trashed critically then that's off. Like once you've already ruined that perfectness of the original trilogy, I want you to just keep going with it and just make more because at that point, like the pristine quality of the trilogy of the franchise is gone. That happened with Star Wars, where we got 3 most people would consider terrible movies. At least I think most people. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm sorry if you like those movies. I'm sorry. But anyway, we got those 3 films that a lot of people don't like. So for me, I'm like, okay, now just make a bunch of Star Wars movies because we've already ruined that pristine quality of the original trilogy. We've already kind of tampered with it now. So just move forward and make it work again. I'd rather it end on a high note than a low note or than a low note. So just keep going with it.
Yeah, to go to Star Wars, which is the other big Lucasfilm franchise, and I want to talk about this separation because all these Indiana Jones movies, they're Steven Spielberg films, and if you do recast Indiana Jones, I still want Steven Spielberg to make these movies. Once Spielberg's out, like to me, it doesn't even really matter anymore. Like they're just now action movies that are being milked for their marketability.
Yeah,
And
and that is because the thing is, a Spielberg movie, you can tell when it's a Spielberg movie, especially with his movies now. Like, if you look at Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then if that was the only Spielberg movie you've ever seen, and then you saw Bridge of Spies, those movies actually look very similar stylistically.
oh yeah,
Spielberg, and I feel about that. I feel that way with a lot of his movies, and um, the thing with that is, I think it would be very interesting if we found a new director, and and Indiana Jones was his. Like, I would love if Spielberg had had some input in like picking the guy to carry the torch,
yeah,
and like have him decide. Like, I think this guy gets it. I've seen a lot
yeah.
of people talk about how they when they saw the first Godzilla, or not the first Godzilla, but the Gareth Edwards Godzilla, which is now the first in this new Godzilla franchise, I guess. I saw a lot of people talk about how that movie had so many Spielberg-esque, or it was handled very Spielberg-esque, because it's a movie where you don't see Godzilla a lot, and that was a thing where a lot of people were very, they were very outraged, or it kind of held the movie back for them, I guess. They really wanted to see just Godzilla going around destroying stuff, and I was in the exact opposite camp of that. I really like the Gareth Edwards Godzilla movie because it's so minimalistic with its use of Godzilla, and when he's there, it really works. And that's a very Jaws thing, where like Jaws, you don't see the shark a lot, but when it's there, it has a bigger impact because it's there. And so I feel like there are directors that have very similar Spielberg tastes that could carry on the franchise, but I agree with you. I don't want like Indiana Jones 5, random director steps in, Indiana Jones 6, another director steps in, and I don't like that. Where it's the opposite with Star Wars, where I don't want a single director to be able to direct all the Star Wars films, because that's not in the spirit of Star Wars. If you know how the original trilogy was made, how much of a collaboration those really were, how many different voices there were, and how many people came together to make that trilogy, that is a very different thing from Indiana Jones, where Indiana Jones is very much the same people doing the same thing continuously, and it's very, very consistent with itself.
Yeah, it has Gary Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy. Um, uh, sorry, did I say Frank Marshall? Did I say Frank Marshall?
I think you said that, yeah.
Okay. There's Gary Marshall and there's Frank Marshall. Gary Marshall makes Valentine's Day and New Year's Eve and those kind of movies. Uh, but I think it's Frank Marshall. I'm just gonna say that, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry.
People will let you know that you're wrong, Connor. Trust
Oh,
me.
yeah, I'm sure, and I'll appreciate it. So it's Frank Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas, and now they're cutting out George Lucas, but they're not really bringing anyone in to fill his shoes. It's like he got cut out of the will, so to speak. So it is the same people, just with less people now.
Hmm.
Um, and they are bringing back. We should probably say they are bringing back David Koepp to write the script, who did write Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And now we can get into an argument as to how much of Crystal Skull was really Lucas or if it was Koepp.
Hmm.
Um, but from the way it's looking now, I'm okay with what they're doing. I'm okay with it. And I there's another thing that people are saying that they want to do, where they're going to have Harrison Ford as a framing device. Have you heard about this?
No.
People want to have like Harrison Ford sitting in his chair. You get a couple detail shots of his hat, and you hear his voice, and you see his whip on the wall. And then he turns to some kid. He's like, "Let me tell you the time I fought these Nazis over Iceland." And then it'll be like, the real movie will be a flashback sequence where they have the younger Indiana Jones.
Uh-huh. So
So
that's a theory as like what this movie is going to be?
yeah, because there it is rumored that this is going to be really a prequel. And not like one of those, let's explain how everything happened. It's just, let's just tell a story from the glory days of Indiana Jones that everyone likes those stories. So let's just bring Harrison Ford back because he's Harrison Ford and he is Indiana Jones, and let's just do this framing device.
That would be very interesting, and I actually really like that idea. I think that could really work. Um,
But to me, it's still strange because we have movies where Indiana Jones is younger.
yeah, yeah, that is.
And it's still strange to me now that we have we're casting a young Han Solo. I'm still excited for that movie because Lord and Miller are the best, but I don't know. We're living in a time because of the internet age. No movie franchise is ever going to actually die. They're just going to keep making them. Uh, Nothing like if something was popular to a specific generation, they're going to revive that now because that generation is an inherent audience that you can make money out of.
Hmm.
So it's such a strange time that we're living in. And I'm not saying any one way is bad. I have my own hesitations. And it's just weird to me that we recast movies where we already have Harrison Ford in. And of course, people are going to say, well, River Phoenix played Indiana Jones in uh, the beginning of Last Crusade. And then there was a young Indiana Jones TV show that I never watched. So people do make the argument that Indiana Jones is not like sacred and unique to Harrison Ford. People have stepped into the shoes. Uh, so where do you stand on that kind of a?
With that thing, it's like, okay, that for me is that I don't like that argument because we've established that Harrison Ford, when he is older, is Indiana or we've established that Indiana Jones, when he is that age, looks like Harrison Ford. In Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that's who he is. And we've established that when he is, in his prime, he's Harrison Ford. That's who he looks like. And in between that time period, does he change to look like somebody else and then change to look back like Harrison Ford? That's why that's weird. With River Phoenix as young Indiana Jones, you can buy that he grew up and changed and looked like Harrison Ford because it's a
Right.
movie and that's one of the things we just give movies. Like, okay, I buy that he's not obviously you can't de-age the person and then age them up. You can't do that. But so it's different for me. It would so if they went like a year after the events of the flashback in Indiana Jones 3 and it wasn't and it wasn't River Phoenix, that's weird. But
Yeah.
5 years after that flashback takes place, you can recast him. I don't care.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, and I got a proposition to make as well. And this is the realm of what could have been. What if River Phoenix is sadly no longer with us? If he was still alive, do you think they would have continued the franchise with River Phoenix?
Depends on what he looked like.
Sure.
If he was Macaulay Culkin, who knows?
But regardless, he still was kind of in the franchise. So, do you think fans would have been like had sentimental value and would have been welcoming of River Phoenix in the role?
Um,
Unless it turned out to be like a Nicolas Cage or something. But I mean, let's face it, Harrison Ford is kind of riding that Nicolas Cage train. He hasn't exactly been in Academy Award winning movies lately. He was in that one movie with Brendan Fraser where he played a doctor with alcoholism or something.
oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Extraordinary Measures. He was in Firewall. He was in What Lies Beneath. Like these aren't recent movies either. I mean, he hasn't exactly been the golden boy of Hollywood.
Yeah. Um, I think that would be an interesting thing. Obviously, that's like a what if. We would never know. But I think people would be welcoming of that, even if it was a bad idea. Like, even if he grew up to be a terrible actor, people would still be like, yeah, put him in the role, because people are like that. They
Yeah.
just want things that sound appealing, but don't necessarily work. And but I don't know. So, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we end this, or
Well, I when it came to Star Wars, I was really nervous with Episode 7 coming up. Not because I didn't think it would be good. I thought it would be like a really good movie. But I was like, if this movie sucks, we officially have more bad Star Wars movies than we have good Star Wars movies.
yeah,
And while I don't think Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a bad movie, I don't think it's a very good Indiana Jones movie. Especially when you look at what they were trying to do. They're like, we're going to make a B movie with Indiana Jones.
yeah,
But it wasn't really a B movie.
yeah.
It was just an adventure serial with an old Indiana Jones and then some sci-fi elements thrown in.
Yeah, it was the sci-fi elements from a B movie and then a regular Indiana Jones movie, and they just combined
Right.
them instead of going with what George Lucas describes in the special features.
Yeah, so if this movie is kind of in the same line as Crystal Skull, which I hope it's not, I hope this is an improvement. And you have to understand, I don't dislike Crystal Skull as much as a lot of other people do. Uh, then I'll be worried with episode like if they make Indy 6 coming. Then they'll be, oh no, are we gonna have as many bad Indiana Jones movies as we have good Indiana Jones movies? But I did want to ask you something. One last question, then, and that would be, what do you think they're gonna do? Do you think they're gonna make like a B movie? Because this is gonna take place probably in the '60s.
I think that they'll do what everyone's doing, and the thing is going back they'll go back to what worked about the original trilogy, and they'll throw that in your face so much. Like, we're going back to what we did in the original trilogy. Like, you'll be able to make a montage of interviews of producers and actors from the film going, oh, well, we're going back to what the original trilogy had, the magic of the original trilogy. Regardless, that's what they'll describe it as to us. That's what they will pitch this as. They'll say, oh, we're going back to this. Regardless of if that's what the product actually winds up being, that's what they're going to pitch it as, I think. And the thing is, here's what I would do. If you really want to pitch it that way, I want this movie, and this I think is the biggest thing that doesn't work for me about the Crystal Skull, is that I think Indiana Jones 5 should go the route of Mad Max and make it like a example of a magnificent use of practical effects in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of what made the original trilogy magical, is that you're just looking at things that you know are real, and you're watching it, and nothing is taking you out of the experience. There's a grime and grittiness to the fights in those movies, and it's it's a spectacle. And Mad Max nailed that, and it has shown that look, you can still do movies that are wowing people on visual levels with practical effects. Not saying that movie does not have special effects in it, because it is touched up heavily with CG, but it's primarily a movie that you're looking at and you're like, yes, this is real. I'm looking at it and I know it is. Indiana Jones 4 has way too many of those overly sunshiny, glistening, weird video game-esque forest backgrounds in that movie, like when Shia LaBeouf's swinging with the monkeys, and I really don't like that stuff. That's something that I think Spielberg's going to keep going with, that I really don't want him to. And also, them being older, or with Harrison Ford being older, practical effects may not work, because a stunt double for an older guy doing a bunch of stunts on practical effects may not work as well, because Do you make the stunt double look older? Will you? I don't know. There's weird things about that. Will Indiana Jones even be doing stunts in this movie? Who
Well,
knows?
I don't know. Indiana Jones wasn't exactly an acrobat in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of did you on the set of Blade Runner, the guy who was Harrison Ford's stunt double was supposed to make that jump, at the end of the movie where he jumps across the buildings.
Yeah.
He was originally supposed to make that jump,
He didn't.
and the guy actually slipped because the rain made the roof so wet that he slipped, and he actually caught the uh, what's it called, the thing hanging off the side. He caught it under his arm,
Wow.
and I was like, "Oh, that looks great! Do it every time!" And it hurt him every time. He got bruised under his rib by his ribs and under his arm a bunch of times. And I'm talking about this because I think you can do like you can have. It's easy to get a young, fit stunt double, make him up to look old, and
Yeah.
he can act a little bit older, and like look like he's hurting himself, but not really hurting himself.
Hmm.
So we don't have to worry about Harrison Ford crashing another plane or anything. So I think what they should do is with Indiana Jones 4, it was, hey guys, look at Indiana Jones is back. It was more about the charm and the novelty of Indiana Jones being back. That's really what it kind of was. More than anything, you have, him whipping out his whip. He's got his hat. He takes, Shia LaBeouf's about to put it on. Oh, hey, that's my hat. And he puts it on. Yeah, you have those moments. And I think with this movie, you have the opportunity to be like, okay, we got all the cutesy novelty stuff out of the way. Now we can make an honest to God, like, older man adventure movie. Or maybe we have Indiana Jones like, I got my sidekick with me, and he's gonna go in and do all the dangerous stuff, and I'm just kind of taking him under my wing. So you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we can do something new and different and more experimental with this kind of a premise than what we've gotten before. Now that we have the hey, Indiana Jones is back out of the way,
Question: do you want Shia LaBeouf back?
I do.
I would
I
agree. I actually like Shia LaBeouf, and he does not bother me in Indiana Jones 4. I actually like Shia LaBeouf as an actor too. So a lot of people don't, but I do.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, here's the thing though, and this is like when I was saying how earlier we were left with pieces at the end of Indiana Jones 4 that a lot of people are sour on, and one of those things is Shia LaBeouf. And I think what we can do now that we have a fifth one is we can bring him back, and we can maybe do something really cool with Mutt, give him this awesome character arc. So when we go back and rewatch Indiana Jones 4, people still don't like Mutt, but they can be like, I know where he's going, so it's now retroactively making me like this movie more.
Yeah, and that's the thing that happens with the X-Men movies, like X-Men 3. It's not a better movie because of X-Men Days of Future Past, but we never would have gotten the reaction to X-Men Days of Future Past would not have been as awesome as it was if it were not for the terrible X-Men movies that had been made before it. Because once that movie came out and you're like, none of that happened anymore, yeah, and you're freaking out, but like that reaction wouldn't exist without those bad movies.
Yeah, it's true. And one of those, like, and I want to go back to what we were talking about X-Men earlier, even though this isn't really about X-Men. The thing that makes X-Men so cool is while X-Men Days of Future Past like retconned a bunch of movies, you can still go back and watch those movies and see how the series evolved to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's entirely like it's a soft reboot. There's a
Yeah.
story reason. There's
Yeah.
a story reason as to why that's happening. And then you have stuff like Jurassic World, and I don't hate Jurassic World. I'm just saying, in Jurassic World, it was let's just pretend those didn't happen. But in the X-Men movies, we did have a story reason as to why those are now gone.
You know what they could do that would be really interesting is if Indiana Jones 5, the artifact that he's after, whatever, what if it's some sort of like time altering artifact? And at the ending of the movie, Indiana Jones winds up and he's like much younger, like early 20s Indiana Jones. That would be awesome.
The fifth dimensional beings from Crystal Skull show back up.
Yeah. We go to that universe. Or it links it to Prometheus.
Yo. Indiana Jones goes to fight some engineers.
Yeah, Indiana Jones, a Covenant, Paradise Lost.
That's lost. Michael Fassbender shows up as the villain. Oh my God! Can we please have Michael Fassbender as a Indiana Jones villain?
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. That's awesome.
He's
Oh
like
my
some
God.
neo-Nazi.
Indiana Jones fights the KKK.
Dude,
That would
yes!
be awesome. That is the next. That's the next thing. It's the Nazis. Then it's the Nazis, then the Russians, then the KKK. That's what we're doing. All right. Well, I guess that's all. Unless you have anything left, Connor. Is that it?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Well, this has been Jackson Rasco
Connor Nielsen.
and this has been the first episode of the new series, Socratic Cinema Circle. Just kidding. It's called Socratic Circle Cinema!